Hey y'all, welcome to the Sci-Fi Side, a podcast about black science fiction and fantasy. I am your very black host, Amber Wallen.
And I'm your second co-host and number one flan, Benjamin Wallen.
Ben, what the hell is a flan?
It is a fan of the TV show Firefly.
So it's not like the like dessert you get at the, flan is what I'm thinking.
I think that's, yeah.
I would rather you be a dessert because you are a snack. Anyway, enough about Ben. Today is episode 2 where we will discuss, hail Gina Prince-Bythewood. She is an icon. If you think you don't know who she is, you do. Why? Because you have seen Love and Basketball. After that, she didn't have to direct anything else. But guess what? She's a bad bitch. So she did. She brought us Beyond the Lights. She also brought us The Secret Life of Bees. And today she's the first black woman to direct a major film adaptation of a comic book. She gave us The Old Guard, and we love it. Ben made me read Volume 1 and Volume 2. So I'm really excited to talk about how it was different from the movie. Ben, I'm just gushing in all of the Gina Prince-Bythewood realness. So why don't you talk a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. She did direct Love and Basketball, which I thought would be perfect for us to watch The Old Guard because Love and Basketball is on that list of black movies that I have to watch for me to continue being with you.
Of course,
right?
Yes.
So we've watched Set It Off, we've watched Babs, we watched The Players Club.
Yes, we have.
Surprisingly enough, though, I had seen Love and Basketball before.
Who showed you Love and Basketball? Baby?
Actually, I watched it when I was a kid. And there was a detail in the film that I'll never forget. It was the first sex scene I had seen with a condom.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I
do vividly remember when Quincy grabbed that condom and it was like, oh, this is how it's done. Which is why she's the GOAT, right? She has this great film about this black woman finding her career and sort of that tug and war of trying to maintain a relationship. But she also says like, hey, motherfuckers, real sex is safe. So y'all should do that. I mean, of course.
Her attention to detail is definitely a big part of this movie, and you see it time and time again. And just a huge warning, there will be spoilers. We loved this movie. So
it's on Netflix. Please go watch it.
Yeah, go watch it. It's amazing. And then come back and listen to us. So the big gist of it deals with this idea of immortality, which is a very, very common theme and science fiction, and I'm thinking specifically of Octavia Butler's Wild Seed, and then Poul Anderson's The Boat of a Million Years, which deals with a group of immortals that are immortal from, thousands of years ago up into a post-human existence, so within far into the future. And that reminded me a lot of The Old Guard. So just to start us off, immortality, Amber, what do you think of it? Do you want it?
I would never want to be immortal. I remember as a child reading Tuck Everlasting. I know it has nothing to do with the Old Guard, but we can't help but think about that when we think about immortality. I would never want to be immortal because, in my mind, I have this like hope and dream that racism, as we progress as a society, will die, eventually, right? One day this is not going to be a thing, and I just think if I was immortal, I would be even more frustrated with humanity because I think growing up in a racialized world, I cannot see a world where that won't exist. To be immortal in that very racialized space is a death sentence.
Yeah. I would hope that humans can get past race, considering race is a fairly new human invention.
Crazy.
Right? From the late 1400s until now. So hopefully we can get past that. But to the point of getting frustrated, highly, highly recommend seeing this movie because it deals with that human response of these immortals getting really frustrated with humanity.
With humanity, time and time again. And that's sort of a trope of superhero movies, right? The superheroes are constantly, you're the expert, so check me if I'm wrong, but the Spider-Man, he eventually becomes infamous and gets a bad rep, and all he's really trying to do is save people. Or what's that scene in The Avengers where they've saved so many people, but look at all this wreckage and debris that you've caused. So it's this idea of save many, kill one or two. but those bodies add up as well.
Exactly. How do you weigh the collateral damage that needs to be paid in order to serve humanity, or in America's case, to serve America specifically?
It's sort of like on The Good Place with the trolley metaphor. We love The Good Place, and we love Chidi's character. If you watch The Good Place, you know what I'm talking about. The trolley metaphor, where this trolley is coming down the track, and Chidi, who is this philosopher who always is very conflicted about what he believes and things like that, it's impossible for him to make a decision. So he has to make the decision to either kill one person on this train track or pull the lever and kill 5, which to you and me is like, kill the one dude, save 5 people. But that toggle of I'm still killing someone is what we kind of see when we discuss these superhero movies, I think.
Mm-hmm. Getting back to this idea of immortality, and I think that immortality, in my mind, is a key to get past of a lot of humans' hiccup. For example, the older you get, maybe the less likely things are going to bother you. Unfortunately, what we see in American society is that the older you get, the more conservative you become, and the more fencing you do. You might accept 1 or 2 people into ethnicity or culture, but you're not going to look at other cultures. The older you get, that sort of depresses me a little bit. So it debunks that idea that living forever is going to allow you to accept more people or even living for a long time is going to allow you to accept more people because less things matter because you live longer.
I see what you're saying, but I think if I was immortal, I would be so annoyed because you're always a 12th grader in a room full of kindergartners. So it's like I'm constantly evolving with my ideas and my thoughts and the way I do things, but everyone else around me is being born and dying, and they are not progressing in that same emotional and mental capacity. So I sympathize. I can't really, because I'm not immortal, but I really hardcore vibe with Andy constantly being annoyed by people around her and humanity. Andy's the main character of the movie and the comic book of the Old Guard, Andromeda. And so I can see that. I know that also in the same breath you can be inspired by new human beings and human ingenuity, but I think for the most part those jaded characters that we see, you get jaded when you're in a room full of people who don't know what's going on, and you're just like, and in 100 years there's going to be a new batch of people that don't know what's happening.
Getting back to your kindergartner 12th grade analogy.
I'm so good with these, aren't I?
It's a great analogy. I think kindergartners, they're so accepting of everyone. And once you become a 12th grader, you find your clique. And then once you get to college, you've developed your racism or your sexism or whatever terrible way you want to treat people. And that's annoying that this idea of growth does not encapsulate social growth with other people. It seems. But if you were to extend it to 100, 200, 300 years, maybe that could happen. And just by the way, if you're questioning if that is even a likelihood, the average lifespan for a good part of humanity wasn't the 70 years or whatever it was now. It was anywhere, 30, 35, and we've extended the lifespan, and hopefully we can continue doing that. However, that does come at a cost. And we see a little bit of that cost in this film that deals with the lack of resources in the world in general, the violence in the world in general. And so you have these group of immortals who are trying to bring some good into this world. Let's get into some major changes right off the bat. Changes from the comic book to the movie. I noticed right away that one of the main characters, a white dude, Copley, is turned into a black man. He's played in the movie. He's played by a black man in the movie Chiwetel Ejiofor. I felt like that was great poetic justice, considering the Italian movie posters of 12 Years a Slave that sort of blew up Brad Pitt's face.
Yeah. So in Italy, they completely redesigned the posters for the movie 12 Years a Slave.
Exactly.
Got you.
And in science fiction specifically, there's a grand tradition of whitewashing book covers.
Oof, I'm sure there is.
Yeah, and even today, N.K. Jemison's trilogy, The 100,000 Kingdoms, The Thousand Kingdoms, great trilogy, loved it. In Germany, they put a white woman with blonde hair on the cover, and the character in the book the main character is not black, but she is definitely not blonde-haired, blue eyes type. At least one of the main characters. So that is 100%.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's a tradition in science fiction specifically. So getting a movie directed by a black woman and doing some of that flipping, I felt for me was an excellent decision right off the bat.
I do as well, and I think if I can say something about this, not only did Copley get was Copley played by a very strong actor, a black man, but Copley got more of a story than he did in the comic book. So just to give you a little bit of context, in the comic book, he was sort of this like CIA agent. In the comic book, he was this rugged CIA agent who ended up betraying the group. I'm not going to give away too much there, but in the movie, we get to know that he had lost his wife to cancer, and he really thought that helping to capture these immortals was going to help save humanity. Like, his intentions were in the right place. So he was very humanized right away. I think every character that made a crazy decision in this movie, you could sort of see like, wow, I see that intention. I'm so excited to talk about like death and everything like that as well. But I thought that was a great way for us to sympathize with his character and accept the fact that he betrayed them.
Right. I want to go into another major change right off the bat that you would notice is that one of the characters in the comic books is named Noriko. She's Japanese, but in the movie, her name is Quinn, and she's played by Veronica Nung. And the reason that was changed is because Veronica, the actress, is Vietnamese. Mm-hmm. And she asked Gina Prince-Bythewood if they could accommodate that. And Gina Prince-Bythewood said, hell fucking yeah.
What do you mean by accommodate that?
That they could make her character Vietnamese and give her a name that was traditionally Vietnamese.
Oh, because the name in the comic book was traditionally Japanese.
Correct.
That just gave me chills because, of course, I'm an actor as well. And I have not been acting very long, and I mostly do theater on the stage. And I would never dream of asking a director, because of the work environments I've been in, I'm not going to name drop, but I've never felt so comfortable with a director that I could say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this line here and what you just put me up to do. Can we make some changes to honor my heritage and honor my culture? And obviously, Gina has created a space and a team of actors where a whole team, producers, writers, everyone, where she has made people feel comfortable where they can talk to her about that. Because, you know, in my mind as an actor, it's like the director has a billion things going on. I don't want to be a problem. I just got in the door. Let me be quiet. And so I love that this woman's like, y'all are my team. I got your backs, and anything you need, let's talk about that. Even if that's different from the comic book. I also love that the man that wrote the comic book, Greg Rucka, wrote the screenplay for the movie. And it's one of those things where, you know, typically sometimes you see a book or a book on screen and you're like, well, the book was way better. This was kind of like, ooh, there are things I love about the comic book, but there are things I loved about the movie. It's so clear that they collaborated together to honor the authenticity and the stories of those characters.
Exactly. In this podcast, we love celebrating Black storytelling, and a question that we discuss a lot about is what is Black storytelling and what is a Black story? And Greg Rucka is a white author, and he's known for putting queer characters and women of color in his comic books. does he have that right is something that we often discuss, like, or to what extent does he have that right? For me, this does become Black storytelling, and we'll get more into that because it is a major comic book movie that's directed by a Black woman. And that, for me, is a huge draw to this film. But let's just go into initial thoughts after we finished this movie. For the first time, we watched it twice. Mm-hmm. The second time, we were slightly drunk. We'd smoke a little weed. Mm-hmm. But after that first time, right when you were done with the film,
we were definitely high watching it last night. But it was great. It was good sober. It was good drunk. It was good.
After that first time, mm-hmm. What were your thoughts?
I mean, because I have watched Star Wars and the Avengers with you, and I have fallen asleep in the theater and at the house.
Multiple times.
Okay, I said it, so you didn't have to. The Old Guard, I was awake from start to finish. It's a 2-hour movie. Well, first off, Charlize Theron, I mean, she can do no wrong. I've been a fan of hers from Mighty Joe Young to obviously Mad Max Fury Road is one of the most epic movies ever. Just so, if I see Charlize Theron in a desert, I'm watching the movie. So, she was such a strong female lead for this movie. But the whole cast was our all-star cast. The whole cast was an all-star cast. I love Kiki Layne. You remember I watched and read If Beale Street Could Talk, so I loved her there. And this movie is so well done. Gina Prince-Bythewood is such a phenomenal storyteller. Gina Prince-Bythewood killed the storytelling. Every character had a name, a story, an arc, a motivation. We truly, as an actor, it's really important for you to know a character's mantra. I learned that from an acting class I took. And so it's like, who is the essence of who this character is? What mantra would they say to themselves every morning when they wake up? And I feel that each of those characters had very distinct mantras, but they all worked together. And GPB, she put it all together. Like, we mixed it up, put some sauce on it, like, serve it up. And we ate that shit. It was great. What were your thoughts?
I mean, right afterwards, I thought, what the fuck? Because you had heard of it, mm-hmm. Actually, I think before I did, which surprised me because I knew the writer of this. I had read his work before, and I love superhero films. So I did not know that this was going to be a story about immortality. We watched it again. I don't think we've ever watched a movie twice.
Nope.
We've never watched a movie. This is the first movie in 5 years that we've watched twice together. Before we get into details, let's just do a really, really brief summary of this. You're introduced to a group, a team. They are contractors. You're assuming some sort of ex-military, and they're hired to do a job to rescue children in Sudan. Their motivation to doing it is very clear from the beginning, is pure altruism. There's no really money involved. These are professionals who are looking to put good in the world. However, they go to the compound to rescue these children, and they are surprised, set up, and shot, and they're killed. And at this point, you're like, what the fuck? Is this going to be a loop time travel thing? That's the first thing I thought.
You're like, damn, the main character just died.
I thought
this must be from the past.
Yeah, exactly. You think there's going to be some sort of flip. And actually, no, they are immortal, and their bodies push out the bullets that they've been littered with. They get up and very violently and brutally, in a non-celebratory way, kill everyone in the room almost in a ballet type of way. The way they feed off each other.
What is it, like the macabre? Did I just pronounce that word right?
I have no idea. The dance, the macabre.
I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say, but you know what I'm trying to say. The macaroni. Keep going.
The macaroni. So they kill, and you discover that this person, Copley, has discovered their secret and now wants to capture them and harvest their genetic code to provide immortality to the rest of the world. And he's doing that through acting as a third party for this big pharma, Silicon Valley type
Down
villain.
with big pharma, yes.
Yeah, a guy named Merrick, who is your big bad. And so you have your Copley, who's like your little bad, and then Merrick, your big bad. And that's basically the premise. Oh, I forgot one of the most important parts. As this is setting up, there is a new immortal who's just discovered. And this is Kiki Lane's character, Nile. And she's the baby of this group. She's a Marine in Afghanistan, and as the moment after they discover that they've been betrayed, the team, and we'll get into the details of the team, this team of immortals, a new immortal is essentially awakened, and they go and find her and bring her to their team. And now it's between the team of immortals versus Copley and the big bad, Big Pharma, Neville Longbottom, Merrick.
Dudley Dursley.
Oh, it's Dudley.
It's Dudley. It's not even Neville. It's Dudley ass.
Even,
I know they look the same, but it's Dudley.
All those British white boys as a children look the same.
I agree, but it was kind of fun to be like, Dudley, is that you for Harry Potter? Like, it was great to be like, we ain't seen you in a minute. Look at you all grown up. Still an asshole.
Exactly.
It was great to see him. I think that's kind of the only way it would have worked, because in the comic book, that figure was like blonde with all these tattoos all over him. So you'd imagine that like Machine Gun Kelly or somebody would be cast in this role, like a Post Malone type. But when we saw that it was Dudley ass, it was like, you know what? That works. I just had to catch you. You were slipping. I had to catch you.
Thank you.
That's why I'm here.
That you just pulled my nerd card.
I did.
Or played your nerd card.
I played my own.
You played your own
yes,
nerd
I
card.
did. Draw 4.
Let's get right into it, talking about Kiki Lane and Charlize Theron's relationship.
Okay, now I'm going to come back to the cat fights, because they weren't cat fights. This is the first movie I've ever seen where the ladies weren't like sexy and ripping each other's clothes off. And so obviously Kiki Lane's character, Nile, is found by Charlize Theron's character, Andy. So Andy finds Nile and, like anyone, basically kidnaps her, and like anyone, Nile is like, where are we going? Why are you taking me away? How anyone will react that way. And then Andy's character just shoots her because she knows she's going to come back to life. And so we see this sort of like mentor-mentee, what am I trying to say? Relationship right away, where she's like, come on, kid, get with me. I'll explain everything. But obviously they're Freeman at first is fighting back and is like, what's going on? And so they have this really great fight scene on the plane, and I cannot express enough how powerful and strong these women look as they're trying to kick each other's ass for a good reason. Not over no man. Nobody's titties are out. This is just true combat, because these are warriors, and we have not seen a lot of that. Even, I might get flamed for this, but like, even Wonder Woman, she's Wonder Woman, but she's got a tight little skirt on. She's got a corset. She's got sweetheart neckline. So her breasts are like nice and perky. And so this is a movie I can get into. Even like Storm, just about every woman I've seen as a superhero is sexualized and objectified in some way, except Black Panther, with all these like warriors in Wakanda that have no hair. So I really get excited when I see two women, one whose hair is braided and one whose hair is completely short, just like duking it out, because that's what warriors would look like if they were fighting. That's one thing I really enjoyed about a big difference between the comic book and the movie is in the comic book, Andy, the main character, had really long, luscious hair that sat right below her chest. Like, she's obviously still beautiful and skinny and all the things. And Charlize Theron, like, she's a bad bitch. She's in great shape. But her hair was short for this movie, which is powerful, because when two women are about to fight on the street, the first thing that happens is people put their hair up in a ponytail, take off the earrings, and duke it out. So I really enjoyed that this movie was like, we're not here to be pretty. We're not here to be sexy and turn people on. We are here to fight because we are warriors.
We also see Nile's Marine crew. Also, they're all women as well.
All women.
Mm-hmm. And that I thought was, again, just a little detail that grounded the story for me in a much realer sense. Also, when she is discovering that she is immortal, they do an excellent job of her dealing with the trauma of killing the man that kills her. And trauma in this film is taken seriously. It's looked at.
It's handled with care.
It's handled with care, and it looks at military personnel and the damaging effects that occur when you take a life. It takes that very seriously.
It stays with you.
But within that sobriety, there are these funny, hilarious moments. The moment you mentioned where Andy is like, oh, fuck, and like, this is going to make things so much easier, and just shoots Niall to show that you're immortal. This is not something that you've imagined. This is real. And I thought that, was really great. But also, you see Charlize Theron driving in the desert.
Mad Max, baby.
And we can watch Charlize Theron, I guess, driving in the desert anytime.
Anytime.
It was
with
really,
short hair, shaved hair.
It was great. But there was a detail I thought was incredibly fascinating. As Kiki Lane leaves the military compound, you see a box that says Merrick, which is the big pharma big bad. And so it's implied that the military is actually going to steal Kiki Lane's character, Niall, after they discover that she can be brought back to life. But
so it's all working together.
I think it's all working together.
It's the system. It's all connected in the great circle of life. Yep.
Which would be awful if a country had possession of one of these super soldiers instead of the old guard, which is these group of individuals who are vigilantes. They bring vigilante justice in the way that they deem best.
Even outside of the warriors and the fighters, one awesome change that the book also made, well, from the book to the movie that, our girl Gina Prince-Bythewood made, was that the scientist in the book was a man, and the scientist in the movie was a woman. And it's just those little things that she does, like you said, that poetic justice of, let me flip a couple of these roles and tropes on their head just so that people can see themselves for the first time in ever represented on film as superheroes. Like, that's not something that I saw a lot of when I was a little kid. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, the woman is a scientist. Like, come on. So I thought that was worth noting. Even the people that were not fighters were different roles.
Something that the film deals with really well is this idea of wanting to give up, especially when you're trying to bring good into the world. And there's a line that says Andy is fed up. She's just fed up with saving people. This is after Copley has betrayed her, betrayed the team, and she says, "The world can burn for all I care. I'm done." That just made me think of all the social workers, teachers that feel that sentiment. But
I mean, don't even get your girl started.
But Andy has made it over 6,000 years.
Right.
Right, trying to do some sort of good.
I put my little 5 years of teaching in, and I said, "Man, I can't do this no more."
Even with immortality, trying to do the right thing is so fucking difficult, and constantly questioning yourself, because the old guard does question themselves.
Yep.
Whether is it appropriate to take this one life to save the many? And they do that. They make that decision to take the one life or the 3 lives or the thousands of lives to save the tens of thousands of lives. And Merrick is also trying to do that. He's trying to capture these immortals to extract their genetic code to provide immortality to the rest of the world. And he says, you could have saved thousands, millions if you just give us your genetic code, even if we have to keep you tied up and cutting parts of you off for all of eternity.
Yeah, but again, it goes back to intention. Merrick isn't doing it because he thinks humanity should live on. He's doing it because he wants to make money. He wants to be the biggest big pharma.
If he had good intentions, does he have a right to capture all the old guard and keep them holed up in a lab.
No. Okay. I will say more. Because this has happened. Not for immortality, but for immortality. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. You can't just capture people and take their cells and their DNA and do what you want with that. That's not how things work. And
well, it is how things work, but not.
That's not how things should work. I remember thinking that same thing when, and research in science is very important, as we know. It has to, for the progression of humanity. But I remember feeling that same sadness when I was watching like E.T. as a child. Because these doctors are coming in and they're just like, we have to take him because we got to study him in a lab. And this little boy's like, but he's my friend. Like, why do you have to take him away? And, you know, we've seen lots of different alien movies and things like that. And there's this sense of like, can't we just let things be sometimes? I know that sounds wild, but can't we just leave this the hell alone? And people come in and don't handle things with care. You know, now I'm getting into like gentrifying and stuff. People just come in and say like, no, but we're going to do the research and we're going to make this so much better. And then this is going to thrive. And it's like, but what happens to the people who were here before you? What happens to that community? Like, so what, you did your research? What happens to Elliot now that you've taken his friend away from him? I think it's really important that you honor that as well. Even with the old guard, if I was that person, I'd be like, hey, we know that you're immortal. What can we do to support? Like, I know I'm a sucker for like the good guy, but I wouldn't be fucking with nobody who was immortal, like for real like that. Leave them the hell alone and lead, like, let them be the leader and you are the example.
That's why this film is excellent, though, because it does make you ask those questions. And Merrick does make me think of major people, big people in Silicon Valley who are bringing us these great products that we use, but they're also assholes. Mm-hmm. And they do terrible things, and they treat their workers like shit. And probably are doing shady things and are probably responsible to death. Merrick is brought to justice and in an amazing way. But before we get to sort of that ending, I do want to talk about the little details in this film that make it incredibly character driven. And in the beginning of the film, before we know that they're immortal, you see the team come together, and we'll go through the teams, you know, step by step. You have Andy, who is the leader. Mm-hmm. You have Joe and Nikki, who is my favorite couple on screen, mm-hmm. and we'll get into that. And then you have
Booker.
And I think it's Joe and Nikki give Charlize Theron's character, Andy, a piece of baklava. Mm-hmm. And you haven't heard really any dialogue at this point.
This is at the beginning of the movie.
This is the beginning of the movie. So they give her a piece of baklava, and she tastes it, she eats it, and she does this like wine tasting, but of baklava style. Mm-hmm. And this has nothing to do with the plot. But immediately I was drawn in
mm-hmm.
to...
And it wasn't in the comic book.
And that scene wasn't in the comic book. Greg Rucka did write the screenplay as well. Oh. And they worked very, very closely. So I'm curious if the Netflix movie is sort of his rewrite of the mm-hmm. old guard, because it did feel so much tighter and stronger. And there was these little moments. But I think the way Gina Prince-Bythewood films this is so intimate. Even though it's a superhero action film. And there's a lot of those little things in here. For example, the reason that they decide to take Copley's offer in the beginning of the movie to save these Sudan children is he's ex-CIA, and he says that the CIA won't get involved with saving these children because Sudan is a non-strategic ally. So they're not going to support.
Wow.
Right? They're not going to support Sudan. And that really, really grounded with me. And then you juxtapose that with the next scene where U.S. military is in Afghanistan, which
Right.
there is a strategic reason for us to be in Afghanistan to make, my opinion, to make wealthier people more wealthy.
Agreed.
And throughout the entire movie, you see that Copley in his office, you see a picture of him and his wife. You see it's an Afrocentric office. You see an Ikenga, I believe, sort of set up in the background, and everything.
What's an Ikenga, Ben?
It is a.
Y'all hear that clicking, though?
All right, so
Get it right.
I just found out what an Ikenga is because Nnedi Okorafor just came out with her first middle-age novel called Ikenga. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but it's basically a powerful symbol of the Igbo people and a very common cultural artifact in Nigeria. In Nigeria. So that little detail, and the reason I saw it was
I just read.
I'm reading Ikenga, and that was just very powerful for me because all the space is curated. He has a British accent that's explained as well, and it's done so fucking excellently.
I think those are we're talking about how Gina Prince-Bythewood has that insane attention to detail. And she does things like that because you can put a black person in a role or you can put a black person in a role. Does that make sense? So you can change this character from black to white, or you can say, we're going to make this character black. We're going to decorate his office in a very Afrocentric way. We're going to ground him in some of these Afrocentric family values, cultural norms, and those are the things that make me think oh, this clearly was directed by a black person. Because it's not enough anymore. We can tell it's, going back to black storytelling, it's did you put a black person in the role or did you create a black narrative? There's a very distinct difference, in my opinion.
She also does that with Niall, Kiki Lane's character.
Period.
Yeah, right. Her father is a Marine, and she's from the South Side of Chicago. And us being in Chicago, I have seen firsthand recruiters focus on poor black and brown neighborhoods and sort of providing the military as a way to escape poverty, right? And so there's that text going on there as well. So that detail is, I think, really poignant. The other thing that she does really extremely well is doing the show don't tell. However, there is scenes where they give a backstory for the old guard to Niall because she's just coming in, right? She's a 21st century woman who is now immortal. And so if you think of each of these immortals as being a ray, having a starting point and then going on forever and ever, her ray starts thinking of it in terms of a timeline. Her ray starts in the 21st century, and each character, Joe and Nikki, they start in the Crusades. Booker starts in the Napoleon Bonaparte era, and Andy starts 6,000 years ago. And they explain one of the old guard who is now missing, Quinn, who was captured after Andy and her were trying to free witches during the witch hunts of the medieval times.
Maybe.
And as they're explaining this, they're showing it as well. So you get this flashback scene. And one of the most horrific parts of this movie is Quinn. They're captured. Quinn and Andy are captured. they're repeatedly hung. They're not dying, so they take Quinn, put her in an Iron Maiden, and drop her down into the sea.
Yeah.
And I was reading that was not in the comic books. What happened in the comic books is that they were sailing on the ocean. A big wave comes and knocks, in this character, Noriko, overboard. This Quinn is put in an Iron Maiden, dropped in the ocean. The reason that is done is because the budget wasn't big enough to have a big storm pirate scene.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, what they did instead was way more haunting. Like, that is a nightmare, to be immortal and to just wake up in the bottom of the ocean, suffocate and drown again, and then just do it all over again. Like, she's died 500 times, at least.
They show it.
It's insanity. They show it, and you feel... I remember I feel like I put my hands around my neck or something just to be like, oh, am I still breathing? Because it was a very effective scene.
We could actually figure out the math, because I think she's in there for 500 years, and your body, you're drowning every, 2 minutes? So how many minutes are in 500 years?
I mean, next caller.
In many ways, this is both a superhero story and an origin story, and it is Kiki Lane's character's origin story.
Yeah.
And there were two major changes that Gina Prince-Bythewood wanted to make, and one of them was to show trauma that's caused by repeated killing over thousands of years. The other one that she wanted to change was to put Kiki Lane's character more at the forefront. I thought that was an excellent decision. It was very powerful. And there's a scene where Kiki Lane is discovering her powers. She puts her hand in a fire just to watch it burn a little bit. And as she does, she pulls her hand away, and Booker, who's become this like really jaded type of character, looks over at her and says, just because we keep living doesn't mean we stop hurting.
And he just carries so much hurt. You see it on his face. He's drinking in every scene.
That line, though, makes me think of what it, like, living as a human isn't just breathing.
It's not.
Getting your basic needs met. That's not living. And it's about relationship, and it's about community. And ultimately, this story does become about community, and also about what happens when someone from your community betrays you. And so there are like twists throughout this movie. The first twist, we realize that they're immortal, and Copley, this contractor, has betrayed them. Another big twist is that there is a new immortal, Niall, who joins the group. And then the final twist is that Booker, who is drinking throughout the film, who we see trying to help his last son. He witnesses his last son die, and so he's carried all this pain. Yeah. Well, he is the one who originally set up the team to be betrayed. Yeah. And the reason he does that is he wants to die.
He wants to die.
He wants to die. He's so traumatized, and he wants to die.
And you sympathize with him. You're like, if I have lived so long to the point where I've watched everyone else around me die, I want to die too. I mean, that's so human, right? Because what is life worth living if you can't share? And it doesn't have to be a romantic partner. What's the point of living if you are alone? It's that idea of just true solitude and loneliness that Booker has. And I think that's why he's such a complex, well-done character, because we've all felt like, wow, I'm just alone. Andy has a moment like that at the end of Volume 1, where she's like, I don't want to fight anymore, but I also don't want to be alone. And so I have to keep fighting with this group to escape loneliness. I have to kill to escape loneliness. I mean, that's what people join organized crime and gangs and do things. And I can so understand, I'm not advocating for the harm that groups do, but I completely understand someone not having community and finding it and needing family and mentorship and strength.
There is that scene where another twist. This movie is filled with twists. Go watch it.
On twists, but not too predictable.
Yeah,
Great.
You discover that the immortals can actually die. Everyone dies. It's just not their time yet. And they get to live longer. So by the end of this movie, Andy actually is no longer healing. And she has lost her immortality. And so at one point she goes to a pharmacy. And it's sort of funny because she has a stab wound. She doesn't know what to buy for medicine to help herself.
That's really cool to think about. That she does, like, I think she was, like, even putting candy in there. The way that people do when you're like, I need the morning after pill. Let me just put some more stuff in this cart to make it look like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing or whatever. And I think it's interesting because her character is probably about, I don't know, mid-40s or late 30s. And the girl at the front desk immediately notices at the clerk at the front is like, you need some help? Like, what's going on?
And so the clerk at the front desk, who's not immortal, just a tertiary character, I don't think we even get her name, sort of reaches out and decides to help Andy. And that small act of kindness inspires Andy to keep fighting. But also a larger part of it is Niall's character, who is new, she's fresh, and she folds her uniform when she's done with it, and she's still very idealistic, and that also inspires Andy as well. And however, with Booker's betrayal, he talks about his loneliness, and there are characters in the Old Guard who are not lonely. Our favorite couple. We haven't really talked about. They're a gay couple that you don't really see portrayed in films.
Never. Obviously we see gay couples portrayed in films, but we also see stereotypical sort of like man and wife dynamics with gay characters that we see on film, and these two characters were just both strong, powerful warrior men, and their relationship almost transcends anything we could ever imagine, right? Because they've been in love for centuries. They're almost like one, like powerful entity, because they're true partners in life who are probably going to live 1,000 lifetimes. And you have to quote this powerful scene that was in the comic book and the movie. Are you going to do it justice?
I am. It is. So this happens after Booker betrays the Old Guard. Joe and Nikki get captured by Merrick's team, and when they're captured, Niall and Andy are away from the action. So Joe and Nikki get captured, and as they're in this vehicle, Joe checks in on Nikki, and one of the soldiers who's riding the vehicle with a gun on them says, what is he, your boyfriend?
Kindergartners.
And Joe's response is, you are a child, an infant, and your mocking is thus infantile. That man is not my boyfriend. That man is more to me than you can dream in your simpering, pathetic life. That man is the stars in my sky and the sun that lights my days. That man is the moon when I am lost in darkness and warmth when I shiver in cold. I love that man beyond measure and reason. His kiss still thrills me even after a millennium since I first tasted him. His body to this day awakens a passion you will never know. His heart overflows with a kindness of which this world is not worthy. His very thoughts make music of the mundane. He is not my boyfriend. He is not my lover, nor is he my partner. He is all and more. He is my everything. Joe says that, and then Nikki looks over him and says, "You incurable romantic," and then they kiss. Mm-hmm. And it is
wow.
It's very powerful, and it makes me glad for my people, my white people, because a white straight man wrote that.
Yeah,
Wow.
there's hope. I think this whole book is about. It's still some good out there.
Gina Prince-Bythewood said that the sequel is going to be up to the audience.
We want it.
Which is why
we need it.
Which is why we wanted to do this podcast, to make sure on this subject, to make sure that the sequel is made.
Gina, if you're listening, please make sure you touch the sequel in some way. If you're too busy to direct it, I understand, but you need to look over the script. You know, come one day on set and just give your opinion and walk away. And I trust that much. So please be a part of the sequel. We love you. Keep doing what you're doing. What would you say to Gina Prince-Bythewood if she was listening?
Please keep on making science fiction and fantasy films. We need voices like yours that bring new perspectives.
All right, Ben. You ready to warp up the show?
Ready to warp it up. In conclusion... Go watch The Old Guard. Go read the books. There's only 2 volumes out. That's it.
Quick read. This was my first comic book I've ever read on my own, y'all, and I loved it. Please read The Old Guard, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Sci-Fi Sci. Stop what you're doing right now and go support Gina Prince-Bythewood. She is amazing. You could go see The Old Guard. It's on Netflix. And also, I mean, who doesn't love seeing love and basketball again and again and again? And y'all, let's get a little scary outside. Halloween's coming up, so we're going to get into that Halloween bag. We'll be exploring a history of black horror by watching the film Horror Noir. It's a documentary that was released in 2019. Be sure to catch those and catch us next time. We'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.